Takže ideme na to. Dneska je 216. relaxačný tréningový deň. 24.6.2024 začíname 18.39, ideme si obrať vestu. Takže ideme na to. Zvoláme si vestu, ideme to rozprúdiť, dobre? Musíme si nejaký podmas, pozriem čo tu máme. No. Ten fastnak budem musieť točiť. Zaspávaj. Dáme to už teraz. Momentálny priestor. Ideme vybaviť tieto veci. Len prvú várku. Už chýba jeden líder a sme finishnutí. Takže ale dneska sú klikožrouty 100, 90, 80, 70, 60 kliksterov. Takže máme klikožrouty. Potom pôjdeme dať vodu a trochu pervitínu šmarkom. Už iba jeden bubble mi chýba, to je nič. To je várka. Prvých 100 klikožroutov je za nami. Ideme dať šmarkom trošku peppermintu. Ale dali sme švákom trošku peppermintu. Vody. Zobali sme odtiaľto vajce. Ktoré tam bolo lišiacky zanesené znova.
So maybe one of the biggest complaints that I've ever had with State of Decay 2, I think is about to be solved in this next update. And I gotta say, guys, if they can pull this off, this will be one of the coolest and one of those major updates that can really change the game in a big way. So they recently released Update 36 at the time of this video, launched not long ago. And it was about the quality of life changes. But Update 37 brings a big mechanic change that's just not any change, but one of the biggest core changes to this game that I've seen since I started covering. And that is they are about to change how the zombie spawns work. And get this, it's going to be more realistic. And let me explain what that means and how that looks. But I do want to mention, guys, that this game is a test bed for State of Decay 3. And you better believe that realistic zombie spawns will be in the next game. You're going to see what I mean in a minute. So let me explain now what the team over at Wushu is cooking with this update. So in a recent Undead Labs live stream, the team behind the current updates talked about what they hope to achieve with the next update. And they want to rework how zombies spawn. So it actually makes it feel like there is more zombies in the world in the appropriate places. Think about like Trumbull Valley and going down south into the city where Marshall is. There you would have like an insane amount of zombies, and that makes total sense because there is tons of buildings pretty much all near each other, and there's businesses and there's all sorts of things happening. Wushu also mentioned that maybe if you go into the remote areas, maybe the farmland areas, that it wouldn't be as crazy overrun with zombies left and right. And I am kind of paraphrasing what they said. Another thing they talked about is when you guys actually see like a screamer scream, zombies kind of like seemingly spawn out of nowhere. Or when zombies kind of do that little war cry where they're like doing all that like ridiculous thing, again, more zombies kind of spawn out of nowhere. Well, they kind of mentioned that they're hoping to eliminate that and make sure that those incidents actually spawn maybe the zombies that are actually in the vicinity and not just completely out of thin air. Now, there is major implications for this because you can really plan this out. You can stay away from major dense city parts. So like I mentioned, think of Trumbull Valley down in Marshall, or actually maybe Spencer's Mill. So you can really map out the areas that won't have a lot of threats. And that's kind of how you would really do it, like in a real zombie apocalypse, right? And I appreciate that because in the stream, they mentioned the word simulation a lot. They were saying if this was kind of like a real zombie apocalypse, it does make sense that in remote areas, it just wouldn't be jam-packed with zombies everywhere. Now, I know for me as a lethal player, it would make looting in certain places like a little bit more calculated. So for instance, there'd be like these low risk and relatively low reward areas because you don't have like a ton of buildings everywhere and there won't be a lot of loot, but at least I know I could be safe going in those areas. But maybe then I could decide to do a high risk, high reward, and I'm thinking I want some guns. I could go into the gun store over there in Spencer's Mill, and that could be, you know, super dangerous and super insane because it would be infested with Zeds everywhere. And all of that really does fit into how the whole world would play out. Now, another interesting aspect about this update, I wanted to do a little bit of, I don't know what you want to call it, maybe some journalism or something. I decided to ask a current State of Decay 3 developer about this update, you know, those guys who used to work on this game before Wushu, and I wondered, is this something they've always wanted to do? I thought he said some really interesting things. Take a listen to this.
So Sunny Games asks, how do you feel about what was mentioned about new spawn mechanics at the Update 36 live stream? Is that something you guys at Undead Labs always hoped it would be, but are now only getting to it, as in more realistic spawn? In the wake of Update 36, Wushu is going to be releasing a new update to the public test realm where they're trying out some new zombie spawning mechanics. And Sunny Games is asking, you know, how we feel about that. Like, is that something that we've always wanted to do and just Wushu just barely got the time to do it? Or is it controversial to it? I don't think you're really asking that, but whatever. No, this is something we have always wanted to do for a long time. We've been sort of thinking of the zombie spawning mechanics in State of Decay 2 as being, you know, adequate for what the game was trying to do, but it's got a lot of sort of rough edges and problems that in a future game we would definitely want to fix. And so seeing Wushu sort of try a new iteration of it in State of Decay 2, it's not just an improvement to State of Decay 2, it's also going to be a learning experience for us, trying to figure out, you know, how these things can be made better. Because, you know, I think some of the problems people run into is, you know, I feel like I've cleared out a space, and suddenly there's a zombie there. And it's one of those things where, you know, even in a zombie TV show, when the characters have a legitimate reason to feel like they have successfully cleaned out a place, and then there's suddenly a zombie that jumps out and murders one of them, that even feels cheap in a TV show where you don't expect to have control over what goes on. You know, you're not it's not like you're a player in a video game who you actually expect things to go according to your plan. In a TV show, you expect surprises, but even then, it sometimes feels really cheap. And so having it happen to you in a video game, you know, can feel especially cheap. And so that's one complaint people have. Another complaint that I often have is there's just nowhere I can go that isn't full of zombies. Because the way that, you know, because we don't actually track individual zombies long term, except for like freaks and hordes, we're constantly despawning and respawning all the zombies around you, which, you know, it's a technical necessity. It means that if we're not careful, it's very easy to just make it feel like, well, just zombies are everywhere. No matter where you go, the game just keeps on spawning zombies randomly. And it can feel like not only that, you know, you're never able to clear a place out, but also it just feels like you can't catch a break. Like, you're trying to escape from a terrible situation, but there's nowhere to go because every other location also has a terrible situation in it. And that's not kind of what you expect. You want there to be emergencies, but you also want there to be breaks from emergencies. You want there to be sort of the excitement of the game to be going up and down, not for it to just be constantly high until you die. That's just not very fun. So we've been wanting to make improvements like this for a long time. I love that Wushu's taking advantage of the public test realm to test some new ideas in this area, and I'll be closely watching what they do because I would love to, you know, to see if we can. Any successes that they have will be very informative for the game that we're working on. Not that that's my area. I'm not in charge of zombie spawning. That's somebody else's area. I have opinions. Hope that answers your question, Sonny.
Guys, that wasn't actually all the information. We actually are set to see huge developments with the curveball mechanic. Now, guys, before you leave this video, don't leave just yet because I know some of you love or hate this mechanic. Trust me, guys. This is about to get pretty juicy as I have done a lot of testing on these new curveball elements, and let's just start from the beginning, which is now an updated UI that gives you complete and utter control of the curveballs. And you can now fully modify these curveballs to be really intense and insane and give you nothing but positive good stuff. Or you can make your game way hard and turn on all the negative curveballs and increase the intensity and just make your game hell right there. You can probably guess which I did. But you can actually also do the opposite too and keep the curveballs on but maybe barely see them every once in a while or just completely turn it off. Let's go ahead and break all this down. Now for starters, the new menu has this enable customization button. And you simply turn that on and now you can just kind of mess with this. The top of the menu has the frequency. Now the regular keeps it pretty much normal where it's at right now. The continual just kind of beams constant curveballs, and it's true guys, it just keeps on coming for the most part. And we'll talk more about that later as I have tons of examples to show you guys. And of course, if you put this at the never setting, it completely turns them off. So now you have another transparent way to turn off curveballs, which is great. Now keep that menu in mind. Now going further a little bit down, we have balance, and this is the fun one. Now you can change the types of curveballs that you want. You can go ahead and put it only on negative, and you're gonna get nothing but chaos, and that's mostly how I play. And of course, I'll show you guys that in a second. Then you can put this on nothing but positive, and if a second, then you can
Skončili. Co za nami? ...216. relaxačný tréningový deň za nami. Bol 24.6.2024, skončili sme 18.57. Segment trval 18 minút.